Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take a whole stack of sources, articles, research papers, maybe some notes, and we really try to pull out the most important bits, the stuff you need to know, those moments that make you go, okay.
Yeah, we're here to sort of guide you through all that information, cut through some of the noise, and get right to the surprising facts and the context that really matters.
And today, we're digging into something properly ancient. I mean, something that really shifted our view of early humans when it was first found. The world's oldest, complete wooden hunting weapons. You probably know the Schöningen spears.
That's right. Found, decades ago now in Germany? They've always been this kind of landmark discovery, evidence of really sophisticated behavior way, way back in prehistory.
But science, well, it never really stands still, does it? It's always refining, always asking new questions. And we've got this fascinating new study here. It uses a really clever technique to look again at the age of these incredible artifacts.
And here's the kicker, really. This new date, it doesn't actually make them less important because they're younger. The researchers argue it makes their significance even greater.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack this surprising redating. We want to understand the science, which is ingenious, and explore why putting these spears more recently in time actually tells us something maybe even more profound about human evolution.
Exactly. So let's try and picture it. Imagine you're standing by this ancient lakeshore in what's now Germany, a place where the mud and the muck basically created this perfect time capsule.
Okay, so Schöningen, it's in Lower Saxony, Germany. And it wasn't like they were looking for spears, right? It was found during coal mining.
That's right, yeah. Completely unexpected discovery back in the mid-1990s. Big open cast mine.
And the preservation was just incredible, wasn't it? That whole lakeside setting, the fine mud, waterlogged conditions, it basically sealed everything. Things that normally just rot away.
Precisely. We're talking wood. Not just, little fragments, but complete, beautifully made wooden spears. And alongside them, other tools, and, crucially, the butchered bones of dozens and dozens of animals, mostly horses, all preserved together.
So when these amazing spears first turned up, how did they figure out how old they were back then? It was the geology, right?
Yeah, initially it was based on the surrounding sediment layers, the geology of the site. First estimates were maybe around 400,000 years old, which was just staggering.
Staggering, yeah.
And then that got refined a bit, still using the sediments down to about 300,000 years old, still putting them deep, deep in the past, sort of lower to middle Paleolithic transition. And for decades, really, that 300,000-year figure was the accepted age.
Okay, so 300,000 years, that's been the number for a long time. But you said there's this new study shaking things up.
Exactly. A big international team, they've just published new work. It's in Science Advances, actually taking a fresh look at that age.
And the new number is?
Around 200,000 years old.
Wow, hold on. 200,000.
Yeah.
That's 100,000 years difference. That feels like a huge jump, making them much younger.
Yeah.
Why? How did they arrive at that?
It is a big chronological shift, absolutely. But like you said, the researchers, this was led by Dr. Jared Hudson at LESA, that's the Leibniz Center for Archaeology. They really emphasize this doesn't make the site less important.
It enhances it, you said.
It enhances it, yeah, because of what it tells us about that specific time period. And the reason they're so confident about this younger date, it comes down to using a very specific, quite advanced dating technique.
Okay, so how did they get to 200,000 years? 100,000 years younger?
Yeah.
What's the technique?
Right. The method's called amino acid geochronology. Now, it sounds a bit technical, but the basic idea is actually, well, pretty elegant.
Okay, break it down for us. Amino acids.
Yeah, think about amino acids. They're the basic building blocks for proteins, right? Essential for life. Now, these amino acids, they can exist in two forms that are mirror images of each other, like your left hand and your right hand. We call them left-handed and right-handed forms.
Okay, L and D forms.
L and D, exactly. And living things, us, the horses they found, the snails in the lake while we're alive, we almost exclusively use the left-handed, the L form amino acids to build our proteins.
Got it. Living stuff is full of lefties.
Pretty much, yeah. But here's the clever part, the geoclock. After an organism dies, those left-handed amino acids, they aren't totally stable forever. Over time, very slowly, some of them start to flip, to change into the right-handed or D form. It's a process called racemization.
Ah, okay. And the amount of flipping tells you the time?
Precisely. The longer something's been dead, the more of its original left-handed amino acids will have converted into the right-handed form. So if you can measure the ratio, the proportion of lefties to righties in a sample, You can figure out roughly how long ago that organism died.
Okay, that makes sense as a principle, like a tiny chemical clock. But how did they apply it in Schöningen? You can't just test the spear wood, can you? Wood's tricky for this.
That's a really key point. Wood is very difficult for this technique over these timescales. So no, they didn't test the spears themselves this way. Instead, they looked for something else, something tiny, but something found in the exact same layer of mud and sediment as the spears. That crucial layer they sometimes call the spear horizon.
Something else organic from that layer that would hold onto its amino acids better.
You got it. They zeroed in on these tiny little trapdoors. The scientific name is opercula, from a particular species of small freshwater snail, Bithynia. These little snails were apparently all over the place in that ancient lake.
Snails. Little snail shell doors. That's what they use to redate these iconic spears. That seems incredibly specific.
It is specific, but it's brilliant because these opercula, they're made of this proteinaceous material that's really well protected within a mineral structure. It basically seals in the amino acids for potentially hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of years. They're like perfect little organic time capsules sitting right there alongside the spears in the mud.
Wow. So tiny snail opercula become the key witnesses to rewrite this major timeline. That is ingenious. Who developed this specific application?
Well, the technique itself, amino acid geochronology, has been around, but the refinements and application here were really pushed forward by Professor Kirsty Pinkman's group at the University of York. They're specialists in this. The actual study applying it to Schöningen was led by Dr. Hudson's team at ELISA in Germany.
Okay. And was it just the snails? Or did they have other evidence pointing to this younger 200,000-year age?
That's important, too. It wasn't just the snails. The study mentions that another team, based in Madrid, did independent tests. They looked at amino acids in different materials from that same spear horizon layer. Specifically, they analyzed bits of fossilized horse teeth and also tiny little crustacean shells called ostracods. Their results also pointed towards that younger age, closer to 200,000 years. So it backs up the snail opercula findings. Having multiple lines of evidence like that, all converging on the same age range, makes the conclusion much, much stronger.
Okay, right. So we've gone from about 300,000 years down to a much more secure 200,000 years, thanks to snail trapdoors, horse teeth, and tiny crustaceans.
Yeah.
Amazing. Now, let's get back to that really intriguing point you made right at the start. Why does being 100,000 years younger make these Schöningen spears more significant, not less?
Yeah, that's the crucial takeaway. And the main message the researchers want us to understand, Professor Pinkman puts it clearly. This 200,000-year date plants Schöningen, with all its amazing finds, firmly within the Middle Paleolithic period.
The Middle Paleolithic, which the time period we associate most strongly with.
With the Neanderthals, exactly.
Okay. So now these incredibly well-made, sophisticated wooden spears are definitely squarely in the Neanderthal era. What does that tell us?
Well, as Dr. Hudson points out, it means Schöningen provides incredibly strong, really compelling evidence for sophisticated hunting strategies. These were being used by early humans, very likely Neanderthals, potentially much earlier, or at least with much clearer, better dated evidence than we maybe appreciated before.
Define sophisticated hunting in this context. It's more than just chucking a pointy stick, right?
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about hunting large animals, these horses. According to the source material, doing that successfully implies a whole suite of advanced cognitive abilities. It suggests, complex communication was needed for planning.
Planning. Strategy.
Strategy, yeah. And the social structures required to actually pull off a coordinated hunt. You can't really bring down a group of horses effectively on your own or just randomly.
No, you'd need teamwork. People having different roles, maybe.
Yeah.
Communicating during the hunt.
Precisely. And the Schöningen site itself gives us strong clues about that kind of behavior. Remember the butchered animal bones found with the spears?
Yeah, mostly horses, you said. Over 50 of them.
Over 50 individuals, yes. Previous studies of those remains, looking at butchery marks, age profiles, and so on, work done by places like the Mun Repos Archaeological Research Center. That analysis points towards repeated, maybe seasonal hunting of small groups of horses right there by the lake.
50 horses isn't just luck or scavenging a few dead animals. That sounds like planned, organized procurement.
It really does. The evidence strongly suggests, well-organized hunting parties were operating there. To successfully hunt, kill, butcher, and use that many large animals requires cooperation. It implies individuals taking on specific, coordinated roles. You might have spotters, drivers, the actual spear wielders, people ready to butcher quickly.
Okay, so you take the sophisticated spears themselves, you add the evidence for systematic hunting of large groups of animals, and now you pin that precisely to 200,000 years ago.
And the conclusion, the researchers argue, is that this period, around 200,000 years ago, represents a really notable increase in the complexity of human cooperation and social organization. These finds aren't just old tools anymore, they're evidence for a significant step change in how early humans, including Neanderthals, were living, hunting, and working together.
So it makes Schöningen a really key site, aligning it with maybe other hints we're seeing elsewhere around this time, pointing to this leap in cognitive and social abilities.
Exactly. It becomes a cornerstone piece of evidence for understanding that crucial period in human evolution, specifically regarding Neanderthal capabilities. It shifts the narrative. This kind of work, like this study, which was funded by the European Research Council, it's genuinely reshaping how we see our deep past.
Wow. So, yeah, it really isn't just about changing a number on a timeline. It's a fundamental reframing. The Schöningen spears, always icons of ancient technology, are now even more powerful evidence. Evidence for complex thought, complex social structures, real cooperation among early humans, specifically Neanderthals, firmly dated to 200,000 years ago, much earlier in the Middle Paleolithic than maybe we gave them credit for.
It really moves the story on. It's not just, wow, humans had spears 300,000 years ago. It's more like, okay, by 200,000 years ago, humans, very likely Neanderthals, were using sophisticated technology as part of complex cooperative strategies to hunt large game. That's a different level of understanding.
It really makes you think. What else were they capable of back then that maybe we're underestimating because we had the timeline slightly off?
It certainly does raise that question. And perhaps it leaves you, our listener, with something to ponder. How does refining these ancient dates, like Schöningen's, actually shift your own perspective on groups like the Neanderthals, on their intelligence, their social lives?
Yeah, and maybe think about what other dates in the deep past, dates we think are solid, might just be waiting for some new technique, maybe involving something as unexpected as snail shells again, to uncover a completely different, perhaps even more fascinating chapter of the human story.